I think this year you're really in for a treat with the livestock we got gathered up and the two experts we got speaking and talking about the livestock. And so I want to go ahead and introduce them. They wanted to keep it brief, but I wanted to introduce these two guys. They put in a lot of work on this. We talked about it last year. They're in it 100%. Talked about what we could do to change it for this year. We took that. We took their advice. We called them. I called them. They were ready to help. They love this event, and we really appreciate them for this. I'll start off with the man on y'all's right, Mr. James Jones, there in the blue shirt. He is the owner of James Jones Livestock, but he's a lot more than that. If y'all aren't familiar with James, he is a buyer of sheep and goats here in San Angelo, and this man, he works hard. He goes hard at it all the time, but more importantly, he works hard for y'all. He is one of the biggest volume buyers, probably out of San Angelo, out in the state of Texas. He moves a tremendous number of sheep and goats. And what's really fascinating about James is he's got connections all over the United States. He buys lambs in Texas and goats and ships them to the East Coast, the West Coast, Chicago, Detroit, New York City. He is very instrumental in our market here in Texas, and especially San Angelo, of getting sheep and goats out and moved. And on top of doing all that, he's got a feed yard, so he can take sheep and goats in. He knows how to feed them, get them right conditioned, and get them to the places they need to go. And so we really appreciate James being here. He's been here the last couple years, does a great job for us, and I can't thank him enough for being here. The other man on y'all's left is Mr. Benny Cox. A lot of y'all know Benny Cox, and some of y'all may not. Benny is the sheep and goat manager at Producer's Livestock Auction here in San Angelo. We're super proud of our sale barn here because it is the nation's largest sheep and goat auction. Think about that. So right here in San Angelo, Texas, we had the largest sheep and goat auction in the nation. Have held that title for forever, as long as I can remember. Benny's been there for over 50 years. He's also very instrumental in the sheep and goat industry. He has been the past president of Texas Sheep and Goat Raisers Association, which has a booth here. He's been president of that, or past president, and he's also been past president of the American Sheep Industry, which was just a few years ago, most recently. And then I also want to brag on him. He is an Angelo State University graduate, and I say that because we are proud of Angelo State University. They got a rich heritage into sheep and goats and Rambouillets, and they're a big supporter of this program and help us a lot. They did a lot for us now for our next session. So with that being said, I'm going to hand it over to them. They brought some livestock in, selected those. These two guys worked together and bought those from a sale barn. So it's a real world situation. And what we've got basically is we've got some extremes. We've got extremes on both ends. Animals that are going to bring a premium and animals that are going to take a deduction. And they're going to walk through those, bring those in and discuss those. And so I think you're in for a great treat. If you have some questions throughout, Dr. Redden's got a mic and we'll facilitate that. But I think if you sit and listen and really absorb this information, it's going to be a lot to absorb, and you'll take home a lot of great information. So guys, I'll hand it over to you.
It does work. Just go ahead and let that first bunch in. I'm going to say something else about James and the guys that do the same job that he does. Y'all owe to those people a big thanks for establishing those channels that allow them to move this livestock across the nation. There's a lot of demand in Texas. A lot of people may not realize that. You've got the Dallas-Fort Worth area and Houston and a tremendous demand for your product here in the States. But James sends livestock to Pennsylvania every week and a lot of places in between. And those people like him that establish those channels, let me tell you something, the money deal is a big issue. We have to tend to it as well, but that's something that's a challenge and a big challenge, and they've certainly done that. So I believe me, those guys have done a great job and established those channels, and it's been going on. We knew they had a big seat here in 1990. I watched Jones grow up. He'd come to sell. I'm old. I've been to sale barn for 54 years. So, and then James bought all these things, and he buys a lot of these ewes for slaughter. A lot of them go to Houston area. to Sammy Harris, who was actually supposed to be here, and he had some issues. We'll show you some of these, some of the fat, some of the thin, and some of the issues when he goes to buy these things. So I guess, James, I'll just hand it over to you, and we can start with this fat girl, I guess.
All right. So when this set of sheep would come through, we would normally send it probably 4 different directions. The fat sheep, the one over here trying to get away, would kind of go to more of a Hispanic market. She's a little too big to go to. I've got a customer in Chicago. They want like small little 120, 30 pound sheep. They'll take fat ones like that, but the rest of them are going to want something that's a little leaner. So that one's going to go to the Hispanic market. The thinner kind of sheep right there would end up going to like Sammy Harris. They've created a channel where they burn the hair and the wool off these sheep, and will make the carcass will have the skin on it, and it becomes a delicacy when you can leave the skin on it. So that actually has created an avenue for these hair sheep and some of these other wool sheep that we're going to see that we never had before. Years ago, it wasn't even a possibility. They used goats, and that's why goats have had a lot more value. But the sheep and the hair sheep are really starting to fill that void. There's a lot less goats out there than there used to be. And these sheep that have this much wool on them, they can't burn them. So that sheep would get 10 or 15 cent deduction most of the time of the year, because it's going to take more time or more effort to burn that sheep or shear it or something before you can actually make it bring the top dollar it's going to for the slaughter avenues. Some of these sheep are young enough to go back to the country. 2 or 3 of them would go back as breeders possibly. A lot of times, like the sheep with the brown head right there is going to be like a Muslim sheep, and a lot of my customers would take them like that, where they're not fat, but they're not lean. They've got some meat to them, and that's exactly what they want when we start killing slaughter ewes, start buying a slaughter ewes.
And I can tell you, if you get into the production end of it and your goal is to sell some females, the slicker individuals are the ones that most desired in this area. And it's not true everywhere, I understand, but the straight white sheep will always tend to sell better in our facility than they will. Especially those that are Dorper crosses have got a multitude of different spots on them. Some of those really slick straight blackheads, you might get some of those sold at a premium at times. We actually had a set of ewe lambs this past week that weighed from 100 to 105 pounds, and they were slick whites, and they bring as dry as it is. They stayed in Texas. 100 of them brought $250 a head, and the 145 of the balance brought $245, which is awful good as dry as it is. If we had a set of really nice high percentage Dorpers that had a lot of those spots on them, they might have brought $1.60 to 80 cents a pound, don't you think, James? I mean, I think that's where we're at, and I'm not trying to beat anybody up, but some of y'all probably have that type versus those straight whites, the dark Croy, so to speak, and that's what most of them are. There's a number of people that have actually started out with the dark Croys and put more Dorper in them, and they're looking more like this fat girl in the back here. And that's okay. They'll raise a lamb that gets maybe a little meatier and maybe gain a little more weight at a certain age. But anyway, from the standpoint of replacements, we tend to get along better with a ewe that looks more like the gal with a tag on there. That's a straight white, nice and round. Yeah, there you go. We wanted to, really point out this packer and packer value of these ewes. We'll kind of do those, and then we'll go down into the lambs. This set here is what we want to show you, where these thinner ewes and kind of where they go, and this fleshy girl, and how they can, how there's a difference in what their value is.
It's going to kind of be the same thing. That big sheep, at this point right now, she would stay in Texas and go to Dallas, maybe the Houston area. She costs 60 cents being big and fat like that. The same ewes right there, I think they cost 72 cents. There's a little more demand for those leaner sheep because they can get more money for that leaner sheep right now. But you can't go too lean. This next set we've got back here, you're gonna see they're a little too lean. These sheep right here, perfect. You can go 2 or 3 different directions with them. They get a lot of marketability compared to one sheep that's too fat, or part of your sheep that are too fat, or part of the sheep that are too thin. I guess they're tired of me talking. We can take these shorn ewes like this and
This work? Got He's got that one. Maybe the batteries low or something. We got batteries coming down. Maybe.
we can take these shorn ewes and they'll work for burning for Harris. They'll work for the Muslim markets up in Chicago or even New York City, where these some of these used to be a little bit fatter for a couple of my customers, but for the most part they're still not working.
Testing, testing. Can y'all hear that?
Okay. All right, so back to these sheep, they can have a little more flesh for a couple of my customers, just be a little rounder, but the 2 leaner sheep are going to be the most marketable sheep right now in Texas.
And I don't know if everybody caught on to this deal. He's talking about burning these sheep. They burn all the hair or wool off of these sheep now, and then clean that and leave the hides left on. And the value of those versus those that they have to skin, there's a tremendous amount of difference in the value of those things, just simply because of the custom or the demand by those different ethnicities that, you know, and we didn't say this, but we're a totally ethnic-driven market here. Most all the auctions in Texas are ethnic-driven markets. Texas A&M University did a research center on our records of wool versus hair sheep. Started back in 2010. 2010, now this is on lambs only, we sold more wool sheep through our ring in 2010 than we did hair sheep. In 2018, it was 9 hair sheep for every 1 wool sheep. So that evolution of wool versus hair in this area changed tremendously, and it's because of the ethnic market, period. We wanted to show you the good and a big diversity in different types, and this is a good one. James said he gave 30 cents for this wool ewe. One of the questions that's asked of me often is, will they bring more if they're shorn, if they're wool sheep? Will they bring more if they're shorn? And the answer is definitely, because most all of them are going to slaughter, and somebody's got to tend to that. And of course the wool is, well, it's not moving very well, and it's kind of a liability now, so that's an issue. And if you have the means, you have to do the math. But if you can get them shorn, you know, they can bring as much as 40 or 50 cents a hundred more than they would with the wool on them.
Part of what I wanted to show you in this set of sheep is not everybody can hold their slaughter ewes, slaughter nannies to hit the higher markets, but the slaughter side of the old whole animals are always higher November, December, January, February, March kind of time frame. These sheep right here would bring, or even the other sheep would bring 30, 40, 50 cents a hundred more in the wintertime than they will today. So if you're working sheep in the wintertime and you have something that you think you need to sell, that's going to be a lot better time to sell it than waiting until the summer. You're out of grass, the flesh condition is gone, they've lost all their yields, and you know you're losing 20, 30, 40, $50 a head selling them in the summer a lot of times than you are if you can sell them in the winter. It doesn't always work, and the weather doesn't always allow that, but
Like this time.
like this time of year, this year, is you need to sell them. But if you can get them sold in the wintertime, it's going to greatly benefit you per head. And I don't know, I would say your cull animals are 20, 30% of your income, at least 10 or 15. So, you know, adding $30, $40 per head is going to help drastically.
Yep.
All right, let's go.
Okay, you got these wool lambs that can certainly go to feedlot. They've still got their tails. Point that deal out. And then you got these club lamb types that are docked. The tails are docked. They're up in the coital ring. Prolapse is a big issue. We see lots of them where people sit there and see them go through there. So I don't like it. I'll just tell you that right now, and you show lamb people that, and I don't like my statement, but I think it's almost inhumane. But they're going to prolapse sometime or another. If those things make it to a feedlot, if they don't make it to, out of the show cut, and they go to a feedlot, there's no telling how many prolapses you can end up with. And I can tell you, I see some of these people that dock their hair sheep like that to keep them. And a hair sheep is, sometimes I'm not sure they're not more prone to having a prolapse than, and I'm talking about those that they're going to keep for use. I'm not sure that they may not have, be more likely to prolapse sometime than even a wool sheep would do. The show lamb types, at certain times of the year, I guess this is about it, because they're doing some of those show goats as well. They take and go in there and pick the cream of the crop off, and then they start selling those things, just cleaning up those pens, and it feeds off the high, and we've seen a good many of them here lately. And those things tend to sell well per pound, and they go straight to processing somewhere. The big ones, at this point, they're bringing up there in that $1.50 to 60 cent range. And then you got some of these that are smaller like that, and hell, she may bring as much as any hair sheep would because the lamb's slick. And then you got these good Rambouillet lambs that are well, they've got their tails, so they could go to a feedlot, but they're big enough they probably wouldn't. Anyway, so I'm gonna break this down.
This year, last year you couldn't give one of these Rambouillet lambs away to go to a feedlot. We actually saw this year there's competition between feedlots and ethnic slaughterhouses trying to buy them. So that's a good sign for the lamb market overall. We're going to take that show lamb, number one, it's sheared, so the yield's going to be better. And it's going to be a lot fatter, and it's going to yield a lot better to have a lot nicer carcass than the pasture raised wool lamb will. I guess all these lambs probably weigh about the same, 75, 80 pounds. It's kind of the target market for these wool lambs. Some of these Dorpers will bring a little more at a lighter weight, but the wool lamb, this is about the perfect weight and size to have on a wool lamb. And the fatter we can get them, the better they're going to sell.
I'm going to talk about that docking again. If those wool lambs are docked like this one, even though they're just a wool lamb, it would go to feedlot. Those feedlot buyers, they won't buy them. They'll have to go to that and kill deals. And when you got competition from the traditional lamb feeding group, which we've had two groups, two different sales, one about 3 or 4 sales ago, and then this week where they bought some of these wool lambs to go to the feedlot, and when they get bigger, I'm talking about those like 80-pound plus lambs, they may give more for them than the ethnic guys will. There's kind of a stop. Jones's customers, when you start getting up over that 75, 80 pounds, then they want to back down. If they can get plenty of those that weigh from 60 to 70 pounds, that's where they want to be. They kind of target that 30-pound carcass as part of that issue. So, anyway, I guess that's enough about that tail doctrine.
That one's not very well trained, is it?
What's that old saying, size matters? You got, the size of these lambs in any given market report has a lot to do with what you can do with those lambs. And James will break these down and kind of tell you, we got those really small ones that are not suited to go to processing, and then you got the big lambs. So we kind of got 3 stages there.
All right, this set of lambs is what we would normally see kind of come in when a lot of the ranchers bring something in. There's a little bit of everything in every group that comes into producers. We'll have a big lamb like that that's going to weigh 90 to 100 pounds. That one, it's kind of got to have it's a select market. There's only a few people that want a 45 to 50, 55 pound carcass. That lamb right there is going to yield 55%, so he's going to be a really big carcass, but he's a really good, fat, smooth lamb. There's a lot of people using these in Dallas and Houston right now. There's some people in Texas using them, or in San Angelo, so they're starting to have a lot of friends, but 2 years ago, you couldn't hardly sell them because they were too big. Last year when the wool lambs got cheaper, they kind of started using more and more wool lambs and bigger lambs because they were so much cheaper than these smaller lambs. And I think we're going to be able to see more of these big lambs going to the ethnic market because they've learned that for the processor there's a better margin. They can make more money off of a big one than they can a small one. So that hopefully will keep our big lambs moving. You got the next size down, kind of weighs 85, 90 pounds. He's going to be a 40, 45 pound carcass. And that's starting to be a little bit big, but he's a really good fat, thick lamb, so he can go to a lot of places. The next two lambs are going to be these are going to be the ones that top the market report. $3, $4, $4.50 a pound. That's going to be the two lambs that's going to bring that kind of money. That little black-headed one and that real solid white one. A 50, 55, 60 pound range, that's what everybody wants. You get down to that little bitty tiny one, and then maybe this other lamb's not carrying as much flesh. Those are probably going to go to the feedlot. We have to buy those and make them a desirable size lamb. There's nobody that's going to use that lamb right now except for myself going on feed or somebody else to try to make it a 60 pound lamb or bring it up to an 80 pound lamb. And the flesh condition on that lamb with the orange ear tag is going to be, he's pretty good, but he could be a little fleshier, a little smoother. But that's what we see. When something comes into the sale, there's 500 head or 200 head, there's going to be a cut of each of these in that group most of the time. You know, maybe not the extreme small one, but a lot of people, they're going to sell their little ones just to get them off the pastures so the coyotes don't eat them. So, you know, we've got to have a channel for every single animal that comes through there.
And I'd like for James to address this as well. It's something that I see through the year. You know, our best performance down here, as mild as it is in the feedlot system, is in the winter and the spring months. And then you get into the June, July, like we've been, excessive heat. It's a big issue where he may be given, and we'll look at some of the smaller goats, but the size of that really small lamb, and then those goats that have to go to the feed pen to be fed to a desirable weight, kind of address the two different times of the year. Those good performance where you don't lose a lot of them because of heat and that. Just briefly.
This time of the year, I mean, 100 and something degrees, you can't keep a little 40 pound animal alive. It's tough. It's tough in the pasture, and it's 10 times tougher after it's been stressed and got put in the feedlot. The profitability, even in the wintertime, it all depends on the time of the year. Springtime, it's a great time to feed them, but everybody's got the same size lamb. Everybody lambs almost the exact same time. So we see lots of lambs all come to town at the exact same size. And there's not always a good time. You can't hardly feed them in March and April, or feed towards March and April, because there's going to be a lot of lambs coming to the market. You know, I can buy some of these lambs today because the reason these lambs are going to bring this much is because nobody else has 50 pound lambs. You know, everybody's getting ready to lamb again, or have really big lambs on their ewes right now. So as we go forward, the market's going to change. So just because the light lamb is worth $3 today, or $2.30 or $40 today, that doesn't mean that you need to sell all your lambs weighing 50 pounds, because there's going to be certain times of the year that a 50 pound lamb brings the absolute least. You need to make it weigh 60 or 70 or 80. And the summertime is just the worst time for these very small lambs and goats to put on feed. You know, if you can worm those, kick them back out, and maybe put a few pounds on them yourself, that's probably going to be beneficial instead of selling a little 35, 40 pound lamb through the auction.
Yeah, and this time of the year, you're working yourself into a better market. When we get into fall, you're going to see the numbers back off. Generally after, deer season, pretty good bet. After that deer season starts, first weekend in November, a lot of people, you may see, under normal conditions, you may see a big push to get rid of the sheep and goats, or go in there and work for sheep and goats and push up to the end of October. Of course, this year, I don't think we're going to be there. It's been so dry and hard. We've had a lot of people forced to sell things and that. But But then the market tends to improve a good deal. Of course, we started to cool off. You know, the nights are already getting longer. By golly, I'm sure I'm past due waiting for this 90-degree stuff. But it's really difficult to see that. And I'll tell you, we don't have a worm problem. And since we're talking about the feedlot deal, we hadn't seen much of a worm problem. We're going to show you that in a minute. But anyway. Stomach worm problem's not a big issue because we've been so hard and dry, and the performance of this livestock has been pretty dadburn good up to this point. We may be going backwards now, but we've seen a lot of big fleshy lambs and a lot of goats that have gotten a lot bigger than the average. While we're talking about the feedlot deal, when we have a really good year and you've got a good lamb that comes in here and he looks like this fellow right here, boy, you're proud of him. And when there's a stomach worm issue, even though if there's a lot of feed out there and he's on a high nutritional plane, he's able to take care of it, he's enough intake that he takes care of himself and those worms. We see more of them die at the sale barn than you might believe. They just don't make it. They're stressed. Let's say like you go, some of these bigger producers down in the southwest of here that may gather once a year, they go in there and they gather those things and everybody looks good and they've got a real high worm load. They bring them to us and we start seeing some signs possibly, maybe lose a few of them. Well, hell, when I loaded them, there wasn't anything wrong with them. But after we've taken, actually they're put on a different feed source, we feed everything. And then they're loaded on a truck and sent out to where he sends them to a customer, or he takes those lambs and puts them in his facility. Oh, here's that fellow we was talking about. He didn't feel very good. I think when James bought him the other day, he had a whole lot more waddle underneath there. I don't know how it went away. I guess he liked that alfalfa we fed him. But they lose a lot of them, and in a bad year, these guys have to adjust them because they lose a lot of them on the end. Our customer at the other end says, hell, there's 5 dead on this load. What the hell are you going to do about it? And if he wants to keep that customer, sometimes he has to ante up, and it's not a good deal. So they're going to adjust accordingly. And I guess in saying that, when your livestock look good and you know you have a worm load, it may be advisable to tend to that. Because the better product you produce, the more likely they are not to discount it at the other end of the market. And I've had people tell me, and I'm not picking on going east, but I'm going to quit buying those kid goats east of here because of the intestinal parasite issue, because I can't keep them alive. When you go west, of course it's dry west, and it's not a big problem generally. But there are tests. I'll go a little further into the darker, the blackheads, and those I tend to see whenever we have a really good spring, winter and spring, and there's a lot of green vegetation out there, I tend to see those that are a higher percentage darker tend to show up than I do these straight whites. And I'm not trying to sell y'all on a straight white sheep or a St. Croix or a Totten or whatever. I'm just telling you that the higher percentage darker, especially these blackheads, tend to show up more than I see these slicker kind of sheep. And it's all about their parasite resistance. You know those other sheep are carrying a worm load because everybody's out there in the same place. I don't know.
I agree with Benny on that. I do think part of that comes from maybe these black-headed sheep maybe come from a little more smaller hobby farm. Maybe the worm load on that piece of property is a little greater than on some of these out west ranches. Those sheep can survive a little better just because they don't have the worm pressure that you do on a little hobby farm. But the reason I threw this lamb in here is I can buy a set of sheep. We bought sheep in like May and June, and they would look as good as any of these big lambs in here. And in 2 weeks, I had lambs that looked like that. And we just put them on feed, hay. They'd be getting everything they wanted, but the worms were getting fed too. The worms were getting feed. And those worms, once they come off of grass and they actually go on good feed, the worms really start getting active, and that's when those lambs really go backwards real quick. So if I kept those animals in my pens for 1 week and then started shipping them, then these worms start showing up in transit in maybe the 3, 4, 5 days it takes me to get them delivered and into the slaughter channel. So I really have to watch out. Once I go to sorting them, I have to watch for these worm loads or heavy worm load lambs and pull them off and vaccinate them and put them on feed, because they can't take the stress. Once they've been stressed coming from y'all's ranch to the sale barn through the pens, it's a huge stressor. So if there is any kind of worm load, or you think you're getting worms and your lambs are small, maybe it is a good thing to go ahead and worm them, get them cleaned up before you go market them. Wait for the withdrawal to get through and everything. And withdrawal is really important. Follow the withdrawal on the label, because we can get in huge trouble whenever we start selling them if they ever come back with any kind of medication or wormer in them.
Yeah, y'all think about that. If he has no idea what you've done to him before he gets them, and if he buys and sends them direct, they know they came from this shipper, and there's a residue test, done at the packing house, and they find that then he's on the line. And we sure don't want them to shut him down. And I'll tell you, this government overreach deal, any politician, anyway. I've never been politically correct, I'll tell you, but if there's no telling what they might do, and they could actually fine him or make him quit doing business. You don't want that to happen, because he spends about $250,000 to $500,000. Then, yeah, you put them wherever, it doesn't matter.
Hey Benny, while we switch these out, 10 years ago there was always a debate whether they were intact, long tail, or worse. Is that a factor anymore?
We see a good many wether goats and some lambs, and they've sold a little better being wethers this time. Even the fleshier ones. But for the most part, people ask me, what if you lamb all year long, you keep your bucks out? And I'm talking about in the production end of it. If you're able to do it, I just tell people 65 is a pretty good target. And if you're going to sell them weighing 65 pounds, I wouldn't worry about cutting them. Castrate. But if you're in, like James was talking about, if you're in a smaller area, a hobby farm type deal, and you would like farm big bred with your sires instead of their brothers and that, well then you may want to castrate them. If you have a good deal of feed and you want them to weigh 80 or 90 pounds, you better. But that would be a time. It's kind of your own situation, but as far as the marketability of these, that 60, 65 pound lamb that's going to bring the top of the market, or like these lambs right here are going to bring that, sell it there, right up there next door to as much per pound as you can get. They don't care if they've got their huevos or not. What, you got anything to add to that part?
Just talk about this. Certain times of the year, you get the ethnic holidays like the Eids. They're just over. It was at the end of June, 1st of July. That they want what they want. Castrated goat, maybe an intact goat, and they want a big buck lamb with its tail if possible, horns if possible. But there's so many Dorkers now. There's not as many horns, so they're just having to learn to live with it. But you can't hit that market all the time. Everybody's doing the same thing. So this year was all right, but there wasn't any huge drive in the market that made it that much better. It wasn't worth changing your whole program to make sure you castrated everything or did castrate everything. The rest of the year, you're trying to hit 3 weeks of the year with a intact male. The rest of the year, it doesn't matter. So just kind of whatever works on your program. And for the holiday of Eid, that Eid's holiday, they want them. Some people want them 60 pounds, some people want them 70, 80, 90, 100, and then some people want big bucks, 200-pound bucks, biggest bucks they can get. So they use a little bit of everything for that holiday. These lambs right here are going to weigh 60, 65 pounds. Perfect size, perfect condition. You're probably going to get the most dollars per pound with the most pounds right here. It's going to be, it would have been knocking on $220 a pound probably this week, $225 at the most. Their bigger mates right here would have been more like $2, $210, $215. You can't go wrong right here, or a 70, 80 pound lamb right now. But this is a good weight, target weight to shoot for. You try to get the higher price if you got really good, fat, fancy kind of lambs. And these can go anywhere. These can go to Houston, they can go to Dallas, they can go customers in New York, Chicago. I mean, they've got a lot of marketability. But springtime, this is all we see. They all weigh 40 to 70 pounds. And everybody wants them to weigh 80 to 100 because they can't get them anywhere else. So, you know, we kind of get flooded part of the year because there's so many of these really nice, juicy spring lambs and lightweight lambs available. So that's why you see the market gets saturated. We may lose 50 cents or $1 a pound on some of them lambs for a little while. And then we'll start getting it back as we go into the fall and winter.
Yeah, and here's another issue and something he almost got there, and that is that and 30 years ago it was drastic. The difference in what a 60, 65-pound lamb would bring and a 90-pounder. Because when people started crossing these or getting into these hair sheep and hair sheep crosses, and they'd send them to the feedlot and make them weigh 100 pounds. Let me tell you, if a hair sheep weighs 100 pounds, I don't care what kind he is, he's fat. And a lot of people would say they had a good spring, they'd send us a bunch of their whole lamb crop, and their 60-pounders would bring more by the head than their 90-pounders. And they'd call me and say, I think y'all made a mistake on my sheep. The 65-pounders brought more than my 90-pound lambs. They were all born out of the same set of ewes. Well, that's the way it was. And I'm going to go right back to the thanks that we owe these people that have established those channels. They've established channels now. It's not near as drastic as it used to be. So here in the last 2 months, where lots of those 80 to 110-pound lambs have brought in excess of $2 a pound, and these have not been bringing over about $2.30. There's not a big disparity like there used to be, and it's because of those people that have established those different channels. I know a bunch of y'all probably heard of Capra, where they kill those bigger, they want those buck lambs that weigh that 100 to 110 pounds. That's helped out. We've got another, both a friend and customer at Jones and ours as well, Capital, that's down there in the Austin area, and he's big on those bigger lambs. He's got a slaughter facility. He's also got a restaurant in Austin. I don't know if it's Austin proper, but it's there. And he uses those big lambs. So they've found a way to do that. And another thing that Jones touched on is when you kill those things, like those lambs that he had to send to the feedlot to get big enough to fit his customers, there's a processing cost when you kill these things. They don't just show up and you wiggle your nose and there's a carcass hanging there. So I'm guessing that it'd be darn cheap if you could get one killed in an inspected plant for $20, and it may be closer to 40. So if you add that to what that carcass weight would be, which is going to end up being less than 30 on these, I'll bet, you got an additional cost to that per pound value. I guess that'd be good. But like John said, that's kind of what you want to show people right there. So it's advisable if you lay them all year long to sort them 3 or 4 times. Believe me, lots of people do. There you go. I'll let you talk about these because I don't know what you're going to say.
2 of these lambs, the 2 black-headed lambs, they're just going to be a little bit heavier. They're going to be good condition. The little white lamb, he's good, but you know, he could use a little feed, or he could use. He's probably going to have to go to Houston or Dallas. He's not going to be good enough for me to send up to Pennsylvania or New York. By the time he gets there, his flesh condition isn't going to be that great. So this would be a good lamb to go to Dallas and Houston. They kind of like them a little leaner. Certain of their customers do, and then you know these good fat Dorper lambs. I mean, they don't have a lot of fat in them. They are fat. They're pretty, but they don't have a lot of excess fat. So almost any customer will like these little lightweight Dorper lambs that are in this kind of shape. And they're a good size, 70 pounds or something. So you can go, it could be a heavy light lamb or a light heavy lamb. I mean, you've got a lot of avenues you can go, and channels you can go with these lambs. Where you start getting them to weigh 80 and 100 pounds, it's hard to always market, 500-600 of them at one time to 1 or 2 customers because they don't need that many lambs. A lot of these people, they'll have a slaughterhouse and they'll use 400 lambs or 400 lambs and goats a week, but they use 50 of each different weight. Each size, it's a different customer they go to, or different ethnicity that takes that lamb. So, you know, we can't just send all one customer's lambs that we buy out of the country out of Selmar. They can't all go to one place. We break those up into 50 and 100 and 150 head groups to fill different orders as we need to. And these 2 lambs are just going to be some wool lambs that are just too poor to do anything with. They've got to go on feed. This time of year being black and suffix and all, they're going to suffer in the feedlot. So, you know, but
They can't take the heat.
they can't take the heat as nearly as well as a Dorper. You know, any of the wool lambs actually struggle so much worse in the heat in the feedlot than the Dorpers do. But these lambs, they have no yield to them, they have no condition to them. I mean, they have to go somewhere, either a customer that deals in a lot of jump, or go on feed. We'll make them a 75, 80 pound lamb as big as they are right now. And they'll be fat and smooth, and, you know, customers will like them then, but there's going to be a big deduction on them whenever we buy them, because we've got a lot to go through before we get them to a marketable weight.
Yeah, I don't know what James gave for these, and James bought all these through the sale Tuesday. Those really nice lambs that were last in here, and we said that's what you want to see. You know, I would have started those at like 210, and they'd end up bringing in that 220, the 223, maybe the 235, the 220 plus. These lambs, I might start these at 150. Yeah, think about that. 150. You know, $1 a pound less. And it's because I know there's going to be a death loss issue here, and what are you going to do with them? There's not many people that desire these. If they get plenty of the others, they don't even want them. Sometimes I have to sell them by the head. These are actually on the verge of unmerchantable as far as I'm concerned. And they really do not do well in this extreme heat.
As we transition from the sheep to the goats, y'all got any questions? Anybody
Took their microwave. So
got a
I can't
question
ask.
for Benny or James? Yes, ma'am.
Oversaturated. Well, let me tell you about this do this angle. What we'll see in the spread of a year, as far as the marketability, this will work on lambs, our kid goats. Generally, now nothing was normal this past year, because they had so many of those cheaper wool lambs up north, and James and a lot of those people that are big handlers went up there and got them. But the last 7, 8, 10 years, you'll see a big raise in the market between Thanksgiving and Christmas. It'll start getting better in the fall when the numbers fall off, but a real big jump between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And then the market will stay good until you get into the spring months. The lambs will tend to start to, you know, show up in bigger numbers, and they'll fall off maybe a couple of weeks before Easter, and that's been happening a good while. I'm not saying go to pot, but it'll start softening up a little bit. Goats still doing well. And the goats you're pretty safe through May. Start getting into June, you better go to watch them. And the end of June, the 1st of July, they'll tear the goat market up as bad as they can do it. They did it this year. Top end of the goats this year, those 60 pound, just primo, the best of the best, brought up to about 430 at a point. The year before, 460. But anyway, 430. The week of the very first week in July, you had to get 220 for one before you get 230. I don't know if we brought over 230, maybe 232. I'm talking about the really good, you're talking about $2 a pound on a 60 pound goat. So figure that one, that's $120 a head. So if you can target by your breeding, or if you can just say, hey, they weigh 55 pounds now, I'm not going to wait till they weigh 75. I know it's good, but here we are at the end of May. Maybe wise to sell them then. Lots of goats get ready, and I think a lot of people still have this thought in mind, everybody's going to have a barbecue July the 4th. It has nothing to do with the goat market, I promise you. It used to, whenever I was a young chap, they'd have 30,000 sheep, and there might be 200 goats, and you'd have some people show up to buy a fat goat because they were going to have a barbecue. But that was with 300 out of 30,000. Now we sell about, well over 40% are goats in our volume at any given sale. And it bounces back and forth. But the big supply of livestock starts in May, and under normal conditions starts in May. And it'll be bigger all the way up to about deer season, which will be through October. And then you'll start to see those numbers kind of fall off some. You got anything to add to that?
I guess a lot of people still breed for the Easter market, or think they kind of are, if not here and in other parts of the country. Like Benny said, May on, but even you get into April and you got to start watching your lamb prices. I mean, we guarantee, we know the price is going to get cheaper 3 or 4 weeks before, 3 weeks before Easter. If it's good that 3rd week before Easter, the 2nd week it's cheaper and it's going to get even worse. I mean, it's just supply and demand. I mean, we'll have a pretty good, huge supply a lot of times down here, but there's a lot of lambs that come from the Midwest and Dakotas and stuff like that. They compete against our market that we don't even realize. You know, for San Angelo, a lot of our stuff goes to Houston, Dallas, Florida, and then there's still some of the markets that I go to New York and Pennsylvania and Indiana. There's not too many other people that go that direction with lambs, because there's a lot of lambs in the Midwest that can actually get to those markets cheaper than we can. You know, but so we're competing against those markets as we get close to Easter, because there's a lot of people that still breed for the Easter market. Certain times of the year, it'll do that, and then sometimes it just shows that you're getting more money. A lot of the lambs that sell through New Holland don't have the same quality. But sometimes the same thing, supply and demand. You are right there next door to New York. When everybody's out of lambs, if it was like a busy weekend, everybody sells out, all the grocery stores are out of lamb, the price of New Holland could be 40 cents higher. But that's the very, very first place it could be 40 cents cheaper or 50 cents cheaper, because it's a captive audience. If nobody's in there to buy them, the other guys that are actually there every week, they'll just steal them. So New Holland's a very weird market, the way it can fluctuate from just being busy one weekend to being slow the next week. And the numbers, you know, they could have 5,000 one week, or they could have 1,500 one week. So that's why the market fluctuates so much at the New Holland sale up there. But a lot of times the quality is not as good as what we sell down here week in, week out.
And those guys up there, a lot of those people may be people that can only use 10 or 30 head, maybe even 50 is a big guy. And so it's so variable. And James knows exactly what he's talking about. He's got a set of pens that's about 20 miles away from there that he ships to every week. He used to do stuff at New Holland and doesn't much anymore, just some stuff maybe. But he ships them up there, and then they're rehydrated and all that, and then his customers come and get them from that location. And James told me years ago, I used to, do stuff there, sell stuff there, and he said, I hardly ever do anymore. So he's an expert on that, to answer that question. But they can sure have too many in a given week, and it's not true. But they're up there, like I say, where those people, if they need them right now, it can be $40 a hundred higher, because they got to have them, and there's enough of them there to do that. I guess we can start with the goat feed.
Any other questions on sheep?
Oh, we got enough.
For your feedlot operations, do you use commercial feed, or do you do a custom blend on your own?
We do a custom blend of our own feed. It's all pretty standard in this area. I mean, everybody uses about the same thing.
I think a follow-up question, are you going to share that custom ration?
She's a main person. We ought to leave her out. She gave us it took us 10 minutes to start her, and another 10 minutes to start all of them. I'll just start off with youthfulness. We've got a couple in here now. Nanny like this nanny right here in the middle, and maybe even the other one. Somebody would possibly buy those to go back to the country. Certainly young enough. She's got a good udder. A set of those. If she is Spanish, she'd bring more by the pound than would a board cross, and that's just a hard cold fact nowadays. And so we definitely have people that are there's always some of those handlers there that'll do your board crosses. The Spanish, which are not as numerous, we tend to see them bring a good deal more by pound. Now, most of these others, we're going to talk about the slaughter value of those.
So like Benny said, the younger breeding age nannies, a lot of the Spanish goats would go back to receps. There's a lot of these show people that are using them for receps, or a lot of people taking them back out to raise kids out in the pasture, raise a little better kid than some of these boar goats do. We'll get to these slaughter nannies. Everything in here is in good condition. I didn't do a very good job of getting a real thin one. But we got these two big nannies right here. You know, they're gonna kind of go more to the Hispanic market. They're gonna get a little too big for some of the people. You know, they're gonna have too big a carcass. Everybody'd rather have a 40, 50, 60 pound carcass, and some of these goats might be a little big. But we talk about the Eads holiday. You know, the nannies' value will change drastically. These nannies right here, all except for the two big ones, would have brought upwards of $2 to $2.30 a pound for about 3 weeks. Today, when I bought these, they probably cost $120. You know, so you got $100 a head difference. Just market them in June, the right week in June. You know, so that's going to be a big deal as you go forward to really watch when you market these nannies. Problem is, if everybody markets them all at the same time, they're going to bring $1.20. But for the most part, there's a huge demand for the nannies. You can't feed them, you can't hold them. You know, they don't have a very long shelf life, 2-3 weeks. So you got to buy them about the third week before that holiday, and then be ready to fill your orders. You know, my customers, I sold almost 1,000 nannies for that Eads holiday. You know, and they have to be delivered one day. It can't be delivered 3 or 4 weeks or 2 weeks in advance. All those nannies had to be delivered the night before the holiday started. So that is an interesting fact that, you know, we may buy them for 3 weeks, but we own them and hold them for a long time before we ever get them marketed. But otherwise, I would sell these nannies. They would probably go to two different customers. One guy's going to want the smaller, smoother kind of nannies, and then the other guys will take these medium nannies, and maybe these big ones, but they're a little bit big and a little fat. These big nannies would end up going to California most of the time. There's a lot more demand for the big fat nannies in California than there is on the East Coast.
What was that deal I said? Big is always better. Sometimes too big is too big. Different times of the year, the bigger billies, like before Eid, these billies like that big white billy standing there in the middle, some of those are bringing up over $3. Through the rest of the year, they'll bring $2 to $2.20. You're lucky if they bring over $2.30. You know, he weighs probably 75, maybe 80 full. Those two right there, you've gone too far. And I know some of you guys like to feed them, put them in a feed pen. If you take them off their mothers, you put them in a feed pen, you got them going pretty good in August, and then it cools off. Man, they're doing good. Next thing you know, they weigh 75 or 80 pounds, and you turn one of those 65 pounders into a goat that can bring, you know, 60, 70 cents, 100 under. I mean, I've seen it where those 60, that same class of goat, and I'll touch on this, the higher selling goats are going to be your boar crosses. If producers often come down, I guess they were all over the world. It's because of James's orders. It's not because he prefers one over the other than the fact they're meatier, genetically, they're meatier, and his order says, I want boar crosses. For the most part. But anyway, you take those two big goats, when they weighed 60, at the same time, weighing at 75, there can be 50 to 75 cents, 100 difference in those goats.
Yeah, this week right now, those big goats are struggling. $2, $2.20 a pound is all you can get out of them. This little tan goat right here, we could have got from $2.80 to $3 for him. Yep. I think he cost almost $3, you know, so, but he's the right size. He kind of weighs 60 pounds, one side or the other, and we can go on, any customer will take him. None of my customers will take that big white goat that I sell. I'll sell 1,000 kid goats. On good weeks, we'll sell 1,000 kid goats, and nobody wants that big goat because he's a little too, he's going to be too much horn and have a little too much smell to him for like a big kid goat, like a big mutton or something. So he has to go to like the African customers, you know, and you limit your abilities when you start having goats that can't go multiple directions. So he's a little too big. The other one will work for kind of a cheater goat, but he's still really too big. I mean, if they can get those 60-pound goats, they'd rather buy those than a 70, 75-pound goat. I mean, that's what their customers want. So that's what my customers want. So I have to help them and, you know, get what they want, or they'll find somebody else to get it for them. So I won't have a job. I won't be up here next year. The other little red goat, he's a little mutton goat. He's a little too big. You know, he's got a lot of genetics to him, so he's going to yield pretty good. He can have just a little more flesh, but you know, he's going to be a big carcass. And I would take kind of a goat like this, and you know, he would end up being one of these goats that are behind us that we're going to show you. You know, these are going to be the goats that they want for eats. But like Benny said, you're talking about 50, 60, 70 cents in value by getting them too big. Dollars per head, you know, maybe you're somewhat close, but
it costs you to get there.
but
in a pen.
it costs you to get there, especially in a pen. So you gotta take that into consideration. And like Benny said, for eats, they'd have brought a premium. They'd have brought 20, 30 cents more than the 60-pound kid. But it's only for 2 or 3 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. And even the week before, everybody's orders were full. So they were 30, 40, 50 cents cheaper just because everybody was full. You know, they only need so many, and when they get their numbers, they don't care. They're not going to buy anything else because they don't even have pen space to hold any more animals than what they've already spoken for. Everybody thinks that the price gets cheaper, so you're going to sell more. It doesn't happen. In this business, they take what they want, when they want, every week, and that is it. So we threw a little nanny kid in here. She's kind of the same thing. She's too big. You know, if you had some muttons and some nannies together, if you're trying to get them bigger, that nanny still need to be marketed at 60 pounds. You know, keep your muttons and try to get them a little bigger. But, you know, the value of her, she'd only be $2, $2.20 a pound. Those same muttons would have cost $2.70 to $2.90 this week. You know, so you did yourself a favor by making those muttons a little bigger, but a big nanny kid, even one bigger than that, you know, she gets much bigger than that, she's going to get sold for kind of a nanny almost. You know, maybe 20, 30 cents a pound more than a nanny's going to bring. This is the goats that they want for the Eads holiday. They have to be these 90, 100-pound muttons for the certain people that want them. You know, a 60-pound mutton's not big enough. And I mean, they'll take some big 120, 30 pounders, but we don't have as many of those anymore as we used to. So this is kind of what they like. And these would have brought $360, $375 a pound in the end of June.
Yeah, right before that holiday. And some people get confused about that. Oh my gosh, what in the world's bringing that? Well, they'll bring more than at time for this particular holiday. They'll bring more per pound than your top end 60-pound kid that generally brings more all year long. You know, little short-horn thing straight off his mother, weighs 60 pounds. It's a high percentage boar. That's the diamond in the rough, or just the diamond, I guess. But on these nannies, I see a lot of these, especially the show type nannies. They come in and they really get them fleshy, and they weigh up there 90 cents or so. And Jones and them are sitting there, and I'm just twisting on them, you know, trying to get $1.60 a pound. And they're just too fat. They just don't fit their customers. And so what are you going to do with it? I mean, you can't put them on a diet and make that work. So keep that in mind. You can go too far. Of course, I know when you're doing selection, especially if you're doing the show deal, you know, you take those things and grow them out, and then you do your selected, you know, your selection there and whatnot. So it just gets that away. But we see a good many of those at times, and I'm sure some people are disappointed looking at the goat market and thinking, well, they're as good goats as there is, and heck, they didn't bring within, you know, $40 a hundred of some of these others that are weighing. So there's quite a difference in what they can do, and it's because, like you said, if we don't send them what they want, we don't have a job next week. And this Eid now, more and more people, I guess they remember how to say Ramadan. It's so easy to say Ramadan. And everybody calls me, when's that Ramadan? I want to sell my stuff then. Ramadan is a holiday of fasting. The way that it influences our market, and it doesn't have to be drastic. Like Jones and I were talking about this here 2 or 3 months ago. When everybody does the same thing at the same time, it just doesn't work quite so well in the market. There's too many that show up. The Ramadan deal, they feast right before and right after, so you've got to time that, and it does have some influence at times, and more times than others, especially when you've got a big flow, you can't hardly even feel it. This Eid's deal, they started, it was the 28th of June, they started gathering stuff up on the 6th, not everything advanced that week, but the next 2 weeks they worked on it, so 3 weeks is how long you had to do this deal. It started on the 28th, we had to sell on the 27th, it was done then. It wasn't anything other than some of these big weathers, that's all.
And the Dallas people could still
And
come.
some of the Dallas still had some, well, and Cap showed up too, but there were some things that were okay, but it wasn't crazy like it was before. There was one group from down in Del Rio that sold a bunch of ewes that were fresh shorn, and they were smaller frame kind of sheep, like he told you about those that were in good flesh. In that one group, they brought $1.20 a pound. We haven't sold any ewes like that, wool ewes like that, all year long. They bring $1.20 a pound. He sent the exact same ewes the next week, which was 27th, they bring 68. Exact same sheep. We're talking about 100 and something in that one week, and another 60, 70 that other week. So that's how drastic the change can be. But that's a slippery slope. Nobody can tell you. I can't tell you. I can tell you how good it was this week, and I can't tell you for sure it'll be great next week. But if it's only one day before the holiday starts, you're way too late.
Okay. And that's the thing, like on these big weathers, everybody doesn't need to keep weather goats and make big 90, 100-pound weathers, because 20-30% of people are going to hit the right market, and 80% of people are going to miss it. We're going to be too early, they're going to be too big at the wrong time or something. So you need to do what fits your program and not just chase the highest markets. Slow and steady probably wins the race. These goats right here probably year in, year out making the most money. These going to be little 55-pound goats mostly. Everything here is good, fleshy, fat. We can go anywhere with these. There's customers in Texas that'll use them for the right price. Then there's, everything else. Most of our kid goats go to the East Coast. 99% of the kid goats that are sold through Angelo go to the East Coast. Chicago or the East Coast. Very few actually get consumed in Texas. It's all sheep and lambs that go to Texas that get consumed here. But these goats, poor goats, they've got a lot of yield to them. I bought some Spanish goats, but there's going to be some difference. Even a really good Spanish goat, that black Spanish goat is about as good as a boar goat. So whenever I say I don't like Spanish, it doesn't mean I don't like a good Spanish. And my customers will like a good Spanish. You can't tell much difference when you take the hide off that black one compared to that red one. But you start getting some of these other Spanish, they don't have as much condition, maybe a little more leg, a little finer bones. They can definitely tell a difference as when they go down the processing line. They can tell the thinner, leaner kind of goats away from the better, fatter goats. So this size goat is really what everybody's looking for.
I'll point out something here now. Now, we're not trying to beat people up. When I said that about the Spanish goat deal, I understand, and James does as well, the mothering of these Spanish. Lots of people in 1990, when they introduced the boar goat, a lot of people went hog wild over the boar, and they got too much influence in their dam side, and they didn't tend to bring as many kids to the pen. So a lot of people, especially as you go south and southwest of here, went back in the other direction. A lot of them gone way back to Spanish, and some of those Spanish goats not quite as good as they need to be, and again, if he sends them to those guys, he may not have that job next week. But I can tell you this, those two little gals right here in the front that are solid color, they tend to look more Spanish, right? The Spanish nanny kid that weighs 55 to 65 pounds today will bring as much as any goat. James bought a good many last week. I had an order last week, not this Tuesday, last week for 50 head for a guy that's he's a paving guy, and I was kind of working on this deal. But anyway, and those goats brought over $3 a pound. And it wasn't just Jones and I that bought some. There was more people bidding on those deals. So a neat set of little Spanish nanny kids will bring a good deal of money because there's not as many of them available. And these guys realize, and they're easy to sell. The straight boar nannies that are like that, I would fair say most every one of those goats slaughter. And if they're good Savannahs, I sure like them. We've got a customer out in the Sheffield area, and he ran off up north and bought a bunch of really high-end billies, and he brings us, and he actually makes buttons out of a bunch of them. He brought them. I think James probably bought some from his ranch actually, and he really does a good job with them. He sold some muttons. Now, they weren't on feed. They were the pasture. He weaned them and he fed them enough to watch them. And he sold some muttons before Christmas. And there was a set of those muttons that weighed 83 pounds. Big, meaty, thick, and all that stuff. And I'm not having them, but I sure like how they look. And he does a really good job of it, with them. And I don't see a lot of goats that look like his that come through there. Most of these are that kind of a white grayish with the little freckled ears and all this stuff, and they're big and meaty. So a big meaty goat is what those guys want. They just tend to know that a lot of these Spanish type don't fit their program because they're just muscular. They're just not as muscular, and they're all predominantly come straight from the pasture. They're not been in a pen or whatever, and that. So, all right, what you got?
I'll say something about the Savannahs. I think some of these Savannahs that are born in Texas are better, but we get some of those from the East Texas, Oklahoma, and Missouri sometimes. We have a worm problem in the feedlot with them. I don't know anything else. I don't know if it's just the worm load from where they came from, but the Savannahs can seem to have a little more worm problem when I get them going into the feedlot than some of the other goats. And I don't know if it's just it goes back to some of that hobby farm, small size, but I really watch out for Savannahs. Kind of wonder where they come from before I buy them, because I've had some pretty bad train wrecks with Savannahs. Not knocking on the breed, just the ones that I had that had problems. They were big problems. You could get in the same thing. I mean, that brown goat. No, that's not the right. That's the other brown one. These are just going to be the Spanish. They're a little leaner. I kind of bought them to be a little bit leaner, but you got the black one. It's probably got a little bit of other little nubian or something in it also, but those other solid black ones, they have to go on feed. They're not going to be good enough to send direct to any customer. If I bought these in a big group, I'd have to sort them off, and they'll go on feed for 30, 45 days and get shipped out. The brown goat, he's almost good enough. He's just not quite big enough. He's a little 45, 50 pounds, and they'd rather be just a little bigger. With the processing charge and everything else, 60-pound goat, you got $30 a head in it. In processing, you just added $1 a pound to that meat. So they want as much weight as they can, but they still want to kind of be only a 30-pound carcass. And something to think about, these goats, we bought them fresh on Tuesday. And I can tell the difference today on what they look like. I don't know if anybody else can, but they kind of look wrung out and like they're just not as good as shape. This is what we deal in. Y'all bring them in and they're fresh off the ranch. They're beautiful. Within 4 or 5 days, this is what we have to work with, and they just go downhill from here. They're never going to look the same as they did when y'all brought them in, unless I put them on feed and bring them out of the feedlot. So we're working on a ticking time bomb. These animals only have about a week-long shelf life. We have to get them bought, sold, and shipped, and delivered to the customer within that week to keep any kind of quality to them. These three right here are just going to be, they're going to be feeder kids. They're going to be a little lean. The boar goat's a little lean. They're only going to weigh 40, 45 pounds, and once again, just not enough condition to kill. So, we're gonna put them on feed, get them up to 60 pounds, and ship them out. We got a couple thin sick ones back here in the back that kind of show the worm issue. Up until we started harvesting milo again, we had $400, $450 on feed. So we were looking at over $2 a pound gain. Not counting death loss and processing fees. So probably $220 when you figure it like that. These two goats, you got the little brown goat, he's gonna have some worms. He's gonna have a little bit of a worm issue. He's not far enough along that he's gonna die. If we get him worms, I think he'll be all right, but you can see a little bit of diarrhea there. This is what we see a lot of. Once we stress these goats out and start moving them around, we'll buy them on Tuesday, we'll process on Wednesday, but a lot of these goats, the ones with a lot of worms on them are going to get to looking like that pretty quick if you don't get them processed. The other little guy, he's small, 30 pounds, 35 pounds. He has no other home except for to go over feed. Somebody's going to have to make him bigger because nobody uses one that size. for the normal slaughter. And these little Spanish goats, they don't gain as well either. So that's the other thing, you know. Boar goat's gonna cost $2 a pound. Spanish goat may cost $2.30. And these are just something that's almost non-marketable. I mean, these little guys are not big enough to do anything with. They'll never be big enough. You know, and Penny gets a lot of calls. I get people all the time want to sell their pygmy goats and stuff, and it's like, there's no value to them. I hate to say it, but sort of just a few little niche markets, you know, you're looking at $20, $30, $40 a head. You know, it's something that's very difficult to market, and it's a waste of time for me to buy them because they'll be blind in 3 or 4 days, and you know, they're going to crawl out and get away from everybody.
Yeah, we can't keep them in the pens. I would keep them in a chicken crate or something, but we really, I shouldn't say it like this, but we really don't like them. They're a royal pain in our keister, and you know, we may end up paying for a goat where you're one shark, we can't figure out where the hell it is, and when we get up the end to sell, we gather everything up that's left down on the yard and sell it for us. Well, we might have bought it for $100 a head, and we get something like this that I can't get for $35. If I'm lucky, $35 a head for it. We have to sell them by the head, and there's some people that do some stuff with them, but they never get big enough. Some of those that are kind of some crosses that get big enough to where they've got a little carcass size. One of Jones's good friends, he'll buy some of them, and I don't know exactly what he does, but keep in mind, he's killing them at an inspected plant, and it costs him $20 or $30 to get them slaughtered. And what do you have left when you take the hide and the head off these fellas? Not much. You got, I guess, a chicken sandwich.
Speak on the marketing time with goats, market goats. Kind of.
Like Benny said,
Anytime.
yeah, anytime. We buy some all the time. October, everybody's cleaning out their pastures for before deer season, a lot of times. So a lot of times there's more goats in the market in October than there is, you know, percentage-wise than there is almost any other time of the year. So it goes down, I mean, there's supply and demand. So they're going to be the cheapest in October probably, or some of them are going to be cheapest. Once you get into December and even in January on, kid goats and nannies are always going to be a little bit higher. So most of the time, winter months, goats are higher, and lambs most of the time. Winter months, lambs are higher, and in the summer months, they're always a little cheaper.
What are you using for dewormer when you go into the feedlot?
I can't say. You just got to use whatever works. It's a difficult process to find the right wormer that works.
When you get to Pennsylvania and your customers come pick up their goats, are they delivering them on the hoof? Are they delivering to a slaughterhouse? What's going on there?
Most of the time I deliver them, and they will deliver them to the barn in Pennsylvania, and then we'll ship them on, give them 2 or 3 days at the barn, and then we'll ship them on, and we go straight to slaughterhouses or to the like live markets where customers can go pick out each individual goat that they want. Otherwise they just go to the slaughterhouse and they just sell them wholesale.
Well, if they're females, they've got to be over 20 in a group that are uniform. The first year I did it, I allowed them to bring everything, and I had some ones and twos. It just doesn't work for us. I mean, you know, it costs a lot to start our machine, but any female group, there has to be at least 20 uniformed in that group. They have to have scrapie tags, and you got to call me and talk to me. If you don't visit with me, that's it. We've done it for, I think, 7 years now. This past year was the only year that wasn't a barn burner, and it didn't disappoint me because we've been dry for 2 years. I mean, you got to be real about this deal, but all the other years have been really, really great eye openers at what these replacement. And a lot of it's because we had a lot of people that came from different, you know, from areas outside our sheep and goat production area here. But anyway, females are asked to be over 20 in a uniform group. I had more goats this year than I had in the past. There's been some years where I had hardly any goats. But yeah, just give me a call and love that. We've done it the 3rd weekend of March. People ask me, "You going to do it again next year?" I said, "Well, I'm getting old. If I'm still there, we might." But anyway, no, we're not going to change it. I've had people say, "Well, you need to change it. It's worked out pretty good." So we're going to stick with what's working. If it ain't broke, we don't want to fix it. Any other questions? Yeah, JR.
It just depends week in, week out. I mean, this week I think we probably sold 550 lambs. You know, they were all different sizes. I could have sold 200 of those 50-pound lambs if I could have found them. You know, they probably would have brought 250 a pound if we could have found the right set of lambs, and there's just nothing available right now. It just depends on the week. You know, it sounds funny, but the end of the month affects my sales. You know, so once we get into the new month, our sales are always better. The demand for meat's more. You get to the very end of the month, everybody orders a few less because they don't know if they're going to sell the meat as well. So there's a lot that goes into the marketing side of those lambs. So
If you've already done it, and you give us that information, we do it back on the cattle, shop records and all that stuff. If you bring a set of lambs or goats in there and you weaned them 30 days ago, and I have that information, now if you bring in those little groups that are unloaded up there by the building, I never see and I'm rock and roll dude. I mean, my job is, the owners are sitting right over here, is to keep that thing going because they want to make money. And we can't take all day to do this deal. But if you bring them in and they're unloaded down there and I see that on the mail, I'll make note of that. And it can make a difference what James is willing to give for those lambs, if you've done it. If you've already done it, you've already spent the money, it doesn't cost you anything to tell us. So anytime you check one in, just give them any information you think is pertinent to the sale of that livestock. There was something I had in mind. Oh, now, these hair sheep are not seasonal breeders, and so a lot of you people I made that suggestion a while ago, sometimes you may need to sort them 3 times, because that 65-pound, that one set of those lambs that came through here, and if you're just gonna do it one time a year, you're fine and dandy. But I can tell you that sorting is worth a lot if you're going to do that. You're going to sell at different times of the year, and one might be the low end time. But when you call James or some of those guys that handle big numbers, and they got to handle big numbers. If you've got a truckload, 48,000, a big semi-load, say 350 lambs. When he loads a truck, I'm going to make a point. When he loads a truck, he's liable to have 15 different classes of livestock on that truck to send it off. So it's not like these lamb feeders, these wool lamb feeders, and these people that are cattle feeders. They want everybody to be cookie cutter. They want 48,000 pounds of lambs that weigh within 5 pounds each other, or they want these steers that weigh within 30 to 50 pounds each other. In his market, he has to be really diversified. And when he ships to Pennsylvania, for instance, he may have 3 to 5 different owners on that truck, and they may have 3 or 4 different types of livestock. So keep in mind that if you get out there and you've got a big group, it's difficult for him to just. I'm not saying he can't buy 300 lambs that weigh 60 to 70 pounds from you, but it doesn't always fit his deal for that reason. It's not like. If he didn't bid you what you think you need to be bid on the things, then you need to bring them to us, I guess, huh? That's my pitch for the day.
yeah, it's just interesting how people conceive this market. We get these big groups, but nothing gets sold to big groups. A lot of the times I sell these to slaughterhouses. They deliver 2 sides of beef, 3 lambs, and 2 kid goats to their customers in New York City. I send them 500 or 1,000. I got one customer I send them 800 head a week, and it all goes out less than 30 head pieces. Most times it's just 2, 3, 4, and 5. So these big groups, we can break them apart and use them, but it's diversified where each group has to go, and all these animals, it's not like they just go to the feedlot and disappear. They get sent out just 1, 2, 3, 4 at a time as the customers order them for the grocery stores or the meat markets and stuff in New York City.
Good deal. Great question.
I feel like gambling on buying right now, but we'll buy anything at a price, but the value just isn't going to be there. Right. Yeah. I'll just put them on feed, put them in the feedlot, try to keep them alive for the next 45 days.
That's where they're going.
We've got some we need to take down there. We've got some we need to take down there.
He was asking about the little pygmy goats and where they go and what they weigh in the carcass and stuff like that. Hey, these are great questions. I love questions, but we do kind of have a schedule. Give these guys a round of applause. It don't get any better.